Hello and welcome to the world-famous Driving You Crazy podcast. This is the show where we talk about all things transportation, anything that gets you from here to there. I am the traffic anchor and transportation reporter for Denver 7 News, Jason Luber, and I have to say, welcome to episode number 200! I can't believe it. Episode number 200. That is remarkable. I never thought we would make it to episode 10. And here we are at episode number 200. Remarkable. And we've had some remarkable shows over the past several years. We've had some remarkable interviews over the past several years. I'm surprised, frankly, that these people still want to talk to me. It's been fascinating interviews, and you can look back at all the 200 episodes, and I think this show has gotten progressively better over the last 200 episodes, which is what you should hope for. And so we'll see if we can make it to another 200 and get up to number 4, but right now, let's just be happy with 200 episodes. If you want to be part of the show, you can give me a call right here on the listener hotline, the number 303-832-0217. You can reach me on any of the contact links in the description of this show that you can get there on Twitter, on Facebook, on the Gmail. Any of those, you can always contact me on any of those links. And you'll also see a link to a story, a news story, a 360 news story about a program from the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, and it's called the Employer-Based Trip Reduction Program. They call it ETRP for short, and it is a really interesting proposal here, and we're going to go through this, and then we're also going to have on Russell Haythorn, who was the reporter for Denver 7 News, who did this story, who has a full piece about this entire program. You can see that piece right now from the link that's in the description of this show. It runs about 5 minutes or so, and it gives you all the people that were involved. And I want to go through this program here and let you know what it's all about before we talk to Russell and then get his in-depth reporting about this, and we'll talk to Russell about that in just a little bit. But I think the story actually landed on the general manager's desk, or maybe came down from him to Russell. Well, I'll ask Russell here in just a little bit, because this proposal is really going to affect large businesses around not only Metro Denver, along the whole entire, it's called the Front Range of Metro Denver. And this could be, and I say this because this could be coming to your town, to your city. It actually has already come to, I think, Durham, North Carolina. I think it's come to Washington or Oregon. It has come to other places, and it could be spreading to other towns around the country. And this employer-based trip reduction program that we'll talk to Russell about in just a little bit, I want to go through the proposal so you know exactly what we're talking about. And it's going to affect large businesses here along the Front Range. That's what I was talking about, the Front Range. So it's going to be, there's Metro Denver, and then there's this area from Denver north up towards Cheyenne that includes Boulder and Fort Collins and Loveland and Greeley and these towns that there's a lot of growth going on in northern Colorado. And that's the entire area, but it also includes a lot of rural areas, including a section of Rocky Mountain National Park where no one lives and there are no businesses. So why would they include that as part of this area that's covered by this proposal? So this again, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, they say the Employee Traffic Reduction Program is being considered by the Air Pollution Control Division as a potential greenhouse gas reduction strategy for employers within Colorado's ozone non-attainment area. I'm sure I didn't say that right, but I'm going to try to get Colorado's ozone non-attainment area with 100 or more employees at one worksite. Since the fall of 2020, the Regional Air Quality Council has worked with, they call them stakeholders, to develop and refine this draft ETRP, or this employer-based trip reduction program concept, for consideration by the Regional Air Quality Council Board. The division is evaluating these strategies right now, and they're listening for feedback. So now we have that out of the way. I have right here the draft. It's number 6 of this proposal. It's the latest one that's available. And I want to go through this with you for a minute before we bring on Russell and talk about it. And on the outset, they say that this draft is for deliberative purposes only. Basically, to talk about it, to banty it around, and to discuss the issues here and there, so then they can continue to refine it. They say it's not intended to represent a formal regulatory proposal. The date of this is February 16th of 2021. So they're continuing to work on this, and they're continuing to evolve it. And I wonder if they're going to take any of the questions that I'm going to pose to Russell, or as we talk about here on the show here, into the program. So they say Part A, Employer-Based Trip Reduction Program. The provisions of Part A apply to any large employer within the 8-hour ozone control area. Other ozone non-attainment areas, or ozone attainment maintenance area, basically what that means is the area of Denver and Metro Denver along the northern Front Range, where most of the people live. Not Colorado Springs. It does include, as I said, Rocky Mountain National Park, at least part of it, and part of the Eastern Plains where very few, if anybody, lives. There are some farmers out there, but there's no neighborhoods. It's not like there's a couple of small towns, but they don't have really a congestion or air quality issue because they have very few people out there. Now, they say the provisions of Part A are not federally enforceable. Okay, well, maybe they're going to do it by the state. Maybe eventually it will become a federal provision. Now, here are the employer requirements. Number one, large employers, basically 250 employers or more, must register their status with the division by January 1st of 2022 or within 30 days of becoming a large employer. So if your business is small, 50 employees, you start growing, and you become a large employer between, let's say, because I've seen 250 to 100. It depends on what their definition of large business is. I've seen anywhere from 100 to 250. So if you become a larger business, and then you have 30 days to register when you become a large employer. Large employers must assign an employee transportation coordinator. Employer transportation coordinator means an individual or entity appointed by an employer to develop, market, administer, and monitor the program. The ETC can be an internal employee or an outside entity contracted by the employer to fulfill requirements of this program. The entity can include metro planning organizations, consultants, transportation management associations, organizations, or government agencies. Right there. Boom. They're creating jobs. They're creating new business right there, because you're going to have somebody either at your business, which most businesses will probably say, will you please take on this added responsibility of being our employer transportation coordinator? Not really going to pay you anything extra for it, but you can go ahead and do that anyway for us. So I guess maybe a computer cop is basically what that job is. All right, so this ETC, as they like to call it, shall serve as the point of contact between the employer and its workforce to implement, promote, and administer the organization's E-Trip efforts. Tasks may include meeting with employees to talk about benefits of carpooling, van pooling, electric vehicles, biking, or riding transit. Assisting employees with ride matching to form carpools or van pools. Promoting the worksite trip, E-Trip, promoting the worksite E-Trip to employees by producing and distributing information pieces. I presume the information pieces come from the Regional Air Quality Council or from the Department of Public Health and Environment. I don't think your employer transportation coordinator is going to be making up flyers. Well, maybe, unless they're very artistic. Coordinating the distribution and collection of biannual E-Trip surveys to all employees, tracking employees' participation in specific program elements, completing the E-Trip report and program description annual report, evaluating E-Trip and making enhancements when necessary, briefing management on E-Trip's progress, maintaining E-Trip related documents and survey results. That sounds like a lot for just here, try this, do this job. It sounds like you're going to have to either take work away from somebody and let them work on this for, a couple hours a week, a bunch of hours a month, or maybe it's a full-time or part-time position that has to be done all the time by one specific person. All right, so now number 4, large employers must conduct an initial employee commute baseline measurement. The survey will ask the travel distance from the employee's home to the work site, what frequency and mode of transportation the employee used to get to work, and how often the employee participates in telecommuting programs or compressed work week schedules. The survey must achieve a 75% response rate. Surveying can be performed by the organization or an outside entity contracted by the employer. This entity can include consultants, transportation management associations, organizations, government agencies, again, creating those jobs that we didn't need in the first place. But what happens if they don't achieve a 75% response rate? What's really missing from all of this is the therefore what? What happens if you don't do it? So that's still a question that I need to ask Russell about. By June 2022, so we're talking about a year from now, large employers shall develop and begin implementing an E-Trip plan that may contain, but not limited to, the following elements. Weekly commuting tracking systems where employees record daily commuting practices. Seriously? So as part of my job, when I get to work, I'm going to have to record. I drove to work from Castle Pines to downtown Denver, and this is how many miles I went. This is how long it took. So that's going to be part of my job, and then turn it in to the employer transportation coordinator, or the business that is going to be the coordinator, and that's going to be a new part of our jobs. Real-time transportation information such as transit schedules or shared transportation information in a prominent space, and it's provided to employees at least twice per year. I imagine that's going to end up the bus schedule or the transit schedule, or just the commuter, the local one here in Denver is called the Regional Transportation District, RTD. So they'll just post that up where they post the number for the workman's comp and all that other stuff right there in that. I think it's in the front, right there by the back door where the employee door is. Surveying can be performed by the organization or an outside entity contracted by the employer. All right. Flex work policies to allow and or encourage alternate work schedules and telework for employees with suitable positions. This is going to be a continuation then of the working from home. I think they're really trying to capitalize on the work from home success that a lot of people have had. And there's a lot of people that still want to work from home. They're actually anxious about going back to an office. And so this would allow for businesses to then say, it's okay, employee, you can stay working from home, because then it gives us this at least one employee, 2 or 3, however many they need, to then telework, not get on the road, and meet their mandate. They say this may include a policy allowing employees to work intermittently, part-time or full-time at home, alternative work schedules, such as compromised work week, allowing a full-time employee to eliminate at least one work day every 2 weeks by working longer hours during the remaining days, resulting in fewer commute trips by the employee. Basically, 410s. I would love to work 410s. I'm already doing 10s or 11s or 12s, so I might as well just do 4 of them and have a 3-day weekend. But I think there are a lot of people, a lot of employees that would love to get on a 4-10 schedule and have 3 weekend days off. By the way, in their context of vehicle, as we were talking about vehicle, it means motorcycles and on-road vehicles powered by gasoline or diesel internal combustion engine. You might hear ICE for short instead of EV. EV, electric vehicle, ICE, internal combustion engine, with 9 or less seating positions. So I guess my Volt, powered by my battery, is fine. So I guess I qualify as an electric car. So I am not a gasoline or diesel internal combustion engine. So boom, I qualify. I'm helping my employer right there by being a battery-powered vehicle. And what if I had a van of 10 people? What if I have one of those big transit vans? It's actually a family. My older daughter, she has one of her friends in middle school. The parents, they had 2 kids, and then boom, they had triplets. So they had 5 kids. Could you imagine having 2 kids and then all of a sudden having triplets, all under the age of 5? Could you that? Whew, God bless them. Anyway, they bought one of those big transit vans so they could transport everybody around. And their license plate says 5 on 2, which is kind of funny. Anyway, so, what kind of a vehicle? Maybe you're getting a different vehicle to meet these requirements. All right. They also say flexible scheduling to shift commute trips by employees outside the period between 6 a.m. and noon. So basically what they're trying to do is get people to work later. So I guess it doesn't count any of this stuff for swing shift overnight employees, because we have a lot of employees at the TV station that actually come into work at 11:30 or midnight and then work on the overnight hours for the early morning. And then I guess I don't count because I usually leave for work at 3 o'clock, 3:15 in the morning. And so I don't count because I'm in before 6 a.m. Actually, I think our entire morning show would be in before 6 a.m. So right there, our business is actually going to be meeting the mandate. All right, here we go. So this is section D of part A and number 3. All right, parking management, including the institution or increase in parking charges for single occupancy vehicles. Omit any parking subsidy from employee benefits package and use onboarding processes and regular information sharing to discourage driving to and parking at an employment site. So they want you to start paying for parking. And where does that money go? Probably to pay for the employer transportation coordinator or for the business that you would be hiring to do all of this work for you. Also, provide parking at a daily rather than monthly rate, preferential parking and or reduced parking charges for high occupancy vehicles, bicycles, and other forms of emerging micro-mobility. You don't need to park a scooter. Well, I guess, or a bike. I guess you have the bike rack. A parking cash-out program providing payment for employees who do not use the parking facilities. So where does that money come from to pay people for not parking at your facility? Maybe it comes from the people who are parking at your facility. Because let's say you have nobody parking at your facility and you're not bringing any income. So where does that money come from then to pay all the employees who are not parking at your facility? Some facilities you actually don't park at. You actually can show up. How many businesses in New York City, your people just already take the subway or they work or whatever. They're actually not driving in, so you don't have enough people paying in. So that's an added cost to the business. All right, providing parking space for car share vehicles or company-owned cars for employee use. Employee shuttles. This may be a circulator between employer locations, between park and ride facilities or transit hubs, or over a longer distance to provide a route for which there is no public transit alternative or capacity, and along with there is a density or potential users. So basically, they want the employer to set up their own public transit with a shuttle system. So you are shuttling people. Let's say it's a grocery store. Let's say it's Walmart. Are you shuttling people from their home to work, or you shuttling them from a outside parking lot to work? I mean, there are a lot of questions with that one. And who's going to pay for that? Because you have to hire somebody to be the driver, the shuttle driver. You have to you have to buy the van. You have to pay for the insurance. You have to pay for the gas or then now you've got another vehicle out there instead of a single occupancy vehicle. Now you have somebody driving employees from campus to campus, or from campus to home or whatever. And then what if it's an electric car? All right, fine, good. But so you're hiring somebody to do that, and who's going to pay for that? It continues. Guaranteed ride home for employees who do not drive. Again, who's going to provide that? I live a half an hour away. It's 25 miles. So they're going to guarantee me a drive at 3 o'clock in the morning, somebody picking me up and driving to work and then driving me home after? That doesn't seem feasible. Rideshare matching to connect employees and promote carpooling and van pooling. Bicycle parking facilities and other active commute facilities, including but not limited to lockers, changing areas, electric bike charging infrastructure, and showers for employees who walk or bicycle to work. Now, that is nice. Actually, at our building, our building is equipped with these lockers that do have this locker room that does have showers, which is a nice feature if you had to stay overnight there at the station, which I've done in the past for snowstorms and other snow coverage, things like that. But not every business is able to do that. It can't. The facilities aren't set up for that sort of thing. So how do you figure that's going to happen? On-site, low/no cost electric vehicle charging infrastructure. All right, but it's going to be a cost to the company that has to put the power out of those charging stations and put it into somebody's car. That costs money. The electricity is not free unless and even if you're getting it from a solar, wherever you're getting the electricity, from a wind generator, from solar, or from the grid, it's still going to cost you money in some way to put that power into a car. And who's going to pay for that? Again, probably the employer. Where's the employer getting all this extra money to provide a van and provide electric charging stations and van pooling and lockers and showers and free ride home to employees who live where? There's actually one employee, one of our engineers, he lives in Pueblo. That's 100 and what is it? Probably I think it's 120, 110 miles between his house and work. 110 miles. How are you going to guarantee him a ride home? All right, it continues. Subsidies and modal support, including subsidies for transit fares, subsidy for carpool and van pool participation, provision of employer vans or third-party vans for van pooling, pre-tax transportation benefits, allowing employees to use pre-tax pay for transit passes, bicycle share, other emerging forms of micro-mobility, payments or passes, or van pool use, and on-site daycare facilities. Again, who's going to pay for the on-site daycare facility? And who says that these businesses have room for an on-site daycare facility? Who's paying for all of this? Where is the money coming from? If you're going to have to subsidize something, that means you're going to have to tax something else to get that money to subsidize somebody else, right? So who are you taking the money from to give it to somebody else? And it doesn't say it explicitly here, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be these businesses. And I imagine that businesses are going to be having a long, hard look at this proposal and talk to the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment and say, look, we can't absorb all of these costs. So then who pays for all of it? Does it then come from taxpayers? Does it come from driving? Is there going to be a new fee for drivers? I mean, there are a lot of questions about where all this money is coming from and how this actually would be implemented. All right, so this is part 3, part B, reduction requirements. Number 1, by January 1st, 2023, large employers are to achieve a single occupancy vehicle employee commute rate of no greater than 75%. Translating to 25% of employees not commuting to the worksite on any one given day by January 1st, 2025. Or within 3 years of becoming a large employer, large employers are to achieve a single occupancy vehicle employee commute rate of no greater than 60%. That's nearly half of the employees in 4 years to stop coming to work on a single occupancy vehicle, or in a single occupancy, or on one, or whatever. The elephant in the room still here is what happens if we don't comply? To me, that's the one glaring omission here. Then what? If I don't do this as an employer, if I'm unable to do this, if it's too expensive to do all of this, which employers are already having to absorb all kinds of COVID costs and try to come out of this pandemic, and then you drop this on them, what happens to a business that fails to meet these targets? What happens if a business ignores it altogether and says, I can't do this because it's going to cost too much, so it's better for me just to put my hands up and say, I can't do this. No, thank you. What happens then? What? There isn't a list of fines anywhere in here or penalties that I can see in this draft. I'll ask Russell about that here in just a minute when he comes on. Because next there's a long section about how to record the results of the employees and if they're complying with the program. There really isn't anything relevant in that part, so I just skipped over it. Again, if you want to read this entire document, it's I posted that too in the description of this show. So you can read this draft proposal, and you can also see Russell Haythorn's reporting on this E-TRP, employer-based trip reduction program, as well. Because really, I want to know, when you read the entire document, and you're looking at what do I do if I can't do all of this stuff? What it doesn't say is what happens if you're bad at record keeping. It doesn't say what happens if you hire a incompetent company or agency, whatever, to keep track of all this, all what your employees are doing. And don't I have a right to privacy to drive where I want, how I want? If I'm driving to work, or I'm going to stop at the post office or stop at the grocery store before I get to work, or go get a coffee, or I can't do that if I'm on the bus. How many people are driving to work? They stop at the Dunkin' or they stop at the Starbucks. They get a coffee. They get something to eat. They stop at McDonald's, and then they go into work. What happens to all those businesses? The secondary effect of taking 40% of commuters off the roadway, and all those businesses that are designed around those commuters. How does all that happen? Now, this part 4, this last part, was exemptions, where it says the following large employers are exempt from the requirements. Hospitals, large employers that certify that employees telework on an average 2 or more days per week. How many employees? Do we have to be up to that 40% range, or in the meantime, 25% range that are teleworking 2 or more days a week? How many employees have to be doing that? Schools are exempt. And you could also get a hardship waiver on a case-by-case determination. So then you have to go in front of their board, their Regional Air Quality Council board, and then beg to say, look, I cannot keep doing this because it's just too expensive for me, or it's just too cumbersome, and it's just not good. And I know this is just a draft proposal, and I know there's going to have to be some pushback and some give and take, but when you ever have a proposal that comes out like this, it's going to happen. It's going to happen in some form. It's bound to happen. It's just a matter of when and how it's going to do that. So now that I've gone through this draft proposal, and you know more about what we're talking about, I want to invite our senior 360 reporter, the one, the only Russell Haythorn, to talk more about this proposal. Russell, thanks again for coming on, and welcome to the world-famous Driving You Crazy podcast.
Hey, thanks, Jason. I appreciate it. It's great to be here on the world-famous Driving You Crazy podcast.
Well, let's start with your initial conversation about this story. How did you learn about it, and what were your first thoughts about how to tackle this story?
Well, I think I learned about it like everyone else did by reading what the CDPHE had proposed. And, you know, as you mentioned, this is the CDPHE's, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. It's sort of their top air quality guys who have come up with this bold and new and, you know, very controversial plan that they're calling the Employee Traffic Reduction Program, or E-TRP is the acronym. And, you know, we decided that it was worthy of a 360 story because there are people who are critical of it and there are people who praise it. So we decided to get all sides, all perspectives, and put it together in a story. So yeah, it's a program that would essentially, as you probably mentioned, require employers with a certain number of employees. And even that is controversial. It could be, really large employers with 250 employees or smaller employers with around 100 employees to come up with alternatives on how to get their employees to work, basically trying to get them out of their single occupancy vehicles and, into van pooling, shuttles, perhaps offering employees passes for public transportation, and even showers at work for those who jog or ride their bikes or whatever.
We'll talk more about those specifics coming up in just a bit. I'm speaking to Russell Haythorn. He is Denver 7 360 reporter, general reporter, all-around great guy reporter. And you can see this story, this 360 story that Russell did. Just click the link that's in the description of this show, and you can see the piece right there. And so you can hear about hear all the people that were involved that he interviewed for this piece. Do you think this is more because it's coming from the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment? Is it more about air quality for them, or is it more about reducing traffic congestion for them?
I think for them, it's more about air quality. At least that's how they're selling it. They're trying to get cars off the road. They're trying to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And so, that's part of the boldness of this plan. They want to achieve 750,000 tons per year reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2025. And if you do the math on that, which I did not do the math on that because I'm not good at math, but other experts have, and that's the equivalent of taking 187,000 cars off Colorado roads by 2025, which is just 4 years from now. So I think for them, it's about air quality, but, perhaps for other players in this, CDOT and others, it obviously reduces congestion, and we have, a huge problem with congestion in this state. Perhaps not when it's, a year of COVID and people are working from home mostly, but, things will get back to normal and there will be more cars on the road, and we certainly do have a congestion problem.
Yeah, we're back getting up to nearly the normal counts of traffic in a lot of the freeways here already.
Are we really?
Oh,
already?
Yeah,
Wow.
we're back up to 85 to 90% on Interstate 70, right there on the north side of downtown Denver. So we're getting closer, and that congestion is coming back. I did see you talk to several people in this story, including CDPHE. What was their overall tone when you were talking to them about this story?
Well, they're being very careful. Even though this would be a mandated program, so companies would be required to come up with a plan if they have a certain number of employees. They're being very careful about that because they want the general public to know that even if employers are required to come up with a plan, that does not mean that employees are required to follow it. They wouldn't be mandated to follow it. So,
well, how does that work when you have a company saying, we want you to either work from home or ride together to work, but then the employee says, no thanks? I mean, how does that work when the employer has some mandates to say you need to do this by, reduce traffic basically, or how many people are coming to work, single occupancy by this much, but the employees say no thanks? I mean, how do you justify that?
Well, that's what CDPHE is doing. Essentially, they're requiring employers to come up with a plan, but not mandating that plan to be followed by employees. So if employees choose not to utilize those options, the employer is not penalized for that. So the employer would be penalized if they don't come up with a plan at all, but they would not be penalized by the state if their employees simply choose not to follow it. Does that make sense?
No, that does make sense. But what would the penalty be if a company decides not to do the plan, saying, my employees are not going to be participating in this anyway, so it would be a waste of my time and resources and money as a business to even come up with a plan? What is the penalty?
I think that's still debatable, Jason. I mean, the state is saying that we intend to be flexible and versatile in what really works for specific employers, organizations, companies, whatever, but there's no real structure in terms of what that penalty might be. And that's, I think, the fear for some companies that, sort of disagree with this, you mandating how I operate my operation, my business. And so, there's a fear that, and there are even some that question the legality of this. Can the state mandate how companies run their business? And that's also debatable, because the state legislature has given CDPHE sort of broad authority to come up with things like this. So I don't know, that can be argued still, but I don't think they've hammered out the details in terms of, okay, what would the penalty be if an employer didn't come up with a plan at all?
I'm speaking with Russell Haythorn. He's our Denver 7 360 reporter, general assignment reporter, overall great reporter for our news organization. And we're talking about this plan, this ETRP plan, that it comes from the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. It's basically an employee traffic reduction program. You talked to several people as well besides CDPHE, including the business. Is he the owner or manager up there in Loveland, Brett Smith?
Oh yeah, Brent Smith. He's the general manager, I believe, or president of some sort for a company called Nutrien in Loveland. And I mean, they essentially are, willing to give this a go. They have 700 employees, Colorado-based employees. I think they have 25,000 employees worldwide. And they say that they don't feel like they're being told to do anything. They feel like this is a collaboration between large businesses and the state. And he had a great quote. I mean, he said, we should be challenging governments, and governments should be challenging companies on what we're going to do to impact our environment and our climate in a positive way moving forward. And so he said they're supportive of anything that's helping to improve environment and climate, and they're willing to give this a shot.
But basically, he would do it anyway, regardless if CDPHE was going to implement this idea or not.
Oh, I don't know if they do that. I don't know if he went that far, but he said that they're certainly willing to give this a shot. They've installed, mechanisms in their parking lot for people to charge, their electric vehicles and things like that. So they are taking steps on their own to, minimize their carbon footprint, so to speak. But they're just sort of trying to comply with whatever the state would require of them.
One of the interesting parts of this ETRP program is that it includes not only the densely packed portion of downtown Denver that does have access to public transportation. Rideshare is easy. Walking around downtown is really easy. But it also includes a lot of rural parts of northern Colorado, including Weld County. It goes all the way out to basically Deer Trail out to the Eastern Plains, where there is no congestion out there. It even includes part of Rocky Mountain National Park, where there are no large employees because there are no large employers there in Rocky Mountain National Park. Why would you include a national park in this and all these rural areas when there's really nobody out there that's dealing with the congestion?
Yeah, I don't know. And that's the question for the state, obviously, and those air quality guys. Who would this include? And I think there is some criticism among companies, even Nutrien, because their campus is located in Loveland, and they don't have the access to public transportation that companies in, closer to the Metro Denver area have. And so, Weld County Commissioner Scott James is very critical of this. He said he understands what they're trying to do, but he says, the problem that he has with that is that, well, one, they don't have access to public transportation quite like people in the Denver metro area have. And, his opinion is they should start with a voluntary program and then work from there. And, immediately going to a mandated or forced program is never good for business. And and sort of turns businesses off to this kind of thing. And then he's also critical of, it could be very detrimental to certain industries and certain businesses. The skilled trades, for example, they have to go from job site to job site in their trucks because they have a lot of equipment. Or, in the ag business, when you're in ag processing, it's not a work from home type situation. When you have the JBS plant or a produce plant in Weld County, or, you need a centralized factory that accommodates a lot of workers. So there is some criticism, and there are definitely some kinks that will need to be ironed out for sure.
Yeah, and I think one of his issues would be the subsidies that would be that are mentioned in this draft. That these subsidies are going to be paid for providing ride sharing, providing ride home for people, charging maybe for parking in some of these businesses. So the change in infrastructure that's being suggested in this draft proposal could really cost businesses a lot of money. And I think what Scott is talking about is there are rural businesses that will be hurt more than, let's say, a downtown Denver business that doesn't maybe have to deal with as much infrastructure to accommodate what is in this proposal.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. And then I think, there's also this equity gap question. And if you're a person who has multiple jobs, say you're a server at, multiple restaurants or something like that, it's not always convenient or easy to ride share or, get on the next bus, especially if the restaurant isn't within, walking distance of a bus stop or something like that. So, for those people, for people who are in, those kind of jobs, it's hard.
Or your job is rideshare, or your job is to go pick up Amazon groceries and make the delivery. If that's your job, then you're not going to be able to, commute commute to work.
Yeah, you may need your car depending on where your job is, where your school is located. I mean, obviously, we have an affordability crisis in the city of Denver where people have to live in, the outer suburbs because they can't afford to live in the city where their job is, perhaps. So when that's the case, it makes it more difficult to get to work. And so we interviewed Dr. Sarah Jackson Shoemate, who teaches geography at MSU Denver, as part of this story as well. And she said, that even though it's a good idea in theory, it could further disadvantage those working multiple jobs. And then she goes on to say, we build cities for cars, not people. And that's evident in, the Central 70 project, which you've reported on extensively. They're adding more lanes to the highway there. And so, her question was, what are we doing about that? We've been building highways since the 1950s, and that infrastructure is really hard to change. But perhaps we need to change our mindset and build, cities that are more walkable or that are more, based on equity.
Sure. We're visiting with Russell Haythorn about the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment Plan, their ETRP, employer-based trip reduction program, and what it all entails. Maybe I should have her on the show and talk to her about this, because there is a difference in how you get around in a suburb, in the rural areas, compared to the downtown urban core of any city, whether it's here or Nashville or Miami or New York City. It's much different to go into an urban core where it is easy to walk around. You walk a mile and you've seen 100 businesses and places to work and places to eat and all kinds of shops. If I walk a mile here, I'm going to see some houses and then not even be over to the King Soopers, because it's another two it's another 2 miles away. So I think it's different when you talk about walking cities, yeah, but you can't make every city just a walking city, because you still have to have deliveries and people coming in. It's just, there has to be a mix of some sort.
Yeah, I totally get that, and I'm with you. I don't necessarily want to run 3 miles to the King Soopers.
And
I
then
mean,
and lug all the groceries back. Yeah,
I'm not a runner anyway. I'm a swimmer, so and I certainly don't want to swim 3 miles to get to King Soopers. So, Yeah, and that's a good point because others have tried this. I mean, Washington State, Oregon State, Boston, Massachusetts, Durham, North Carolina, just to name a few. And I think that there really have been mixed reviews about how it works in those cities. Some say it works great, others say it's a mess and it's not working.
You mentioned that one business up there in Loveland, Nutrien. But I was thinking about other businesses that have, like Walmart. It's a perfect example. I think they're the largest employer in the state. So they have tens of thousands of employees, but not necessarily more than a couple hundred at any one facility, and maybe even less than 100 at some of their stores. So when they say their definition of a large company is, let's say, 100 of employees or more, then you might have a company that employs thousands of people, but maybe not everybody at one at one place, like a Walmart or a King Soopers or something like that. So, I mean, is there any accommodation? Did they talk about any accommodation for companies like that with large groups of employees, but maybe spread out over the entire state?
Yeah, I didn't really get into that in my conversation with the CDPHE, but I'm certain that it's something that they're taking into account, and yeah, I mean that creates an issue as well.
And their definition of vehicle, when I was going through their draft proposal, is that their definition is vehicle is gas or diesel. So that makes me presume that electric vehicles are exempt. And if we're all going to be driving electric vehicles in the next 20 years, then maybe this whole draft proposal or this whole thing would be obsolete as more people are driving electric cars, or maybe they would just add that later to this entire to this proposal.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And then what? I mean, we still have an issue with congestion. We perhaps eliminate the air quality concerns of people driving to work, but then we still have you know, the problem with gridlock because so many people are driving to work, even if they're in electric cars. So, um, to your first point, during our conversation, I think that all of this needs to be debated because, yes, if electric vehicles become the primary, single occupancy vehicle on the roads, in the years to come, that's still a gridlock problem.
When you talked to the CDPHE, did they ever indicate that there might be in the future, as you said right now, there's no enforcement, there's no penalty if a company doesn't enforce basically the employees don't have to do it, the employers have to do it, but if the employers don't do it, there's not a therefore what yet. So, but did they look at maybe in the future of implementing some kind of penalties? Did they give you any kind of indication that that might happen?
They did not, but I think, as we discussed, that's the fear that companies have is that, okay, well, yes, I'm mandated to come up with a plan, but my employees are not mandated to follow the plan. But when's the next shoe going to drop? I mean, when will I be penalized for employees not following the plan? And I think that kind of uncertainty makes large employers, companies, businesses, a little skittish about anything like this.
When do you think that this is going to go through? Is this just a proposal, or are they going to start actually implementing this and having
Yeah,
it sent?
this is just a proposal at this point. But I think it's got some traction, for lack of a better term, and it's perhaps only a matter of time. But a lot of details need to be hammered out still, and so I don't think there's a clear timeline on when this might be implemented statewide.
Oh, it's going to be really interesting to follow this. Russell Haythorn, the intrepid reporter there at Denver 7 News.
I'll take that.
Oh,
Thank you.
do you have other other titles that you'd like to put on your business card?
No, we'll go with Intrepid.
All right,
Yeah,
perfect.
sure.
All right.
I'll take that.
You can watch Russell's report, his 360 report on this trip, employer-based trip reduction program, right here on the description of this show. You'll see the link right there. You just click on that. You can see the 360 report that runs about 5 minutes or so, and get more details from Russell and hear from all the people that he interviewed as part of this piece. So, Russell, thanks again for breaking this down for us. And if you have any more of these great traffic stories, of course, let us
Yeah,
know.
hey, that was fun, Jason. I'll join you anytime. So give me a call. I've rarely talked to you or seen you during COVID, so it's nice to hear your voice.
It's great to catch up with you as well. So thanks again, Russell, for your reporting.
All right, take care.
I think this is actually the second time I had Russell on. I don't remember. I know I've had him on in the past, but anyway, yeah, and it would be nice to see him and see everybody at the station. I haven't seen a lot of people in a year, so I do miss all of that. Anyway, if you want to watch Russell's piece, you can see it right now. There's a link to his to it right now on the description of this show. You can also read through the draft proposal from the Colorado Department of Health and Environment. You can read that as well. All of it right now is in the description of this program. It's also where you can find all the contact information to contact me. If you want to get a hold of me, leave me a voicemail message. 303-832-0217 is the phone number. Thanks again for being here. Thanks for staying with me for 200 episodes. And here's to 200 more. I don't know. Maybe not. That's a lot of episodes. Thanks for listening. And until next time, I'm Jason Luber, the traffic guy. Be safe and, as always, happy motoring.